All right, guys, I think we are now live for another weekly Thursday night edition of Conversations with Commodores. And I can't tell you guys how happy I am to have my friend and fellow colleague, Anthony Joseph, AJ, with us tonight. How are you doing, AJ?
I'm doing quite well. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. We've had a good few minutes of catching up just now, but we've got so many great things to talk about. And before we jump into those things, I want to thank everybody who just continues to show up on Thursday nights. We've been doing this, I think this is 27, 28, or 29 weeks we've done this. And we've got another at least 10 that I've got scheduled out coming up. So we're going to try and do this throughout the year. And there's just so many awesome Commodores out there to share their story, their life lessons. And that's what I love about these conversations. So thank you for those who have been with us so far up to this point. And for those of you, I'm going to thank you ahead of time who are on the docket coming. But tonight, we've got in the early 70s, there was not a more bruising and powerful runner than Anthony Joseph. And if y'all saw those video clips I shared earlier in the week, you saw some of that man's on the field talents. And I can't say enough good things about Anthony. I don't call him Anthony, it's AJ. Everybody knows him as AJ. But AJ, before we take it back in the Wayback Machine, tell people a little bit about yourself and your profession and your family life.
Well, I currently practice law here in Birmingham with the law firm of Maynard, Cooper, and Gale. I've been with them about 15 years now, and I won't go into all the stuff I've done up until this point. Married, 3 sons. My oldest works for the University of Kansas. Middle son is a car consultant down in Auburn. And my youngest son is a Commodore who just graduated from 2019, and he works for One. And my primary focus is white collar criminal defense work. I do basically all criminal type cases other than drugs and violent crimes. So that's sort of my area of expertise.
Well, if you guys haven't met AJ or don't know him, he's not just a former Commodore. He's not just a white collar defense attorney with a very prominent law firm. He's so many more things. He's been FBI trained. He volunteers, you name an organization in Birmingham or probably in the South. He's been part of it. Big Brothers Big Sisters, YMCA. I could go on and on and on. And frankly, AJ, that's the kind of, and I've never told you this, but that's some of the things that I've just so admired about you and your character and who you are. And despite all of these accomplishments, Flash, you would never, ever get it out of AJ, just the successes that he has reached. And to him, it's no big deal. It's a Tuesday. It's a Wednesday. But I got for you. Those are some real accomplishments. And we're going to get into some of those things. But I wanted to make sure I expressed that to you, AJ, before we got too far. Absolutely. Now, AJ, where did you grow up? Where did you spend your years up through high school?
Birmingham is home for me.
Okay.
I came back here in 1986 and have been here ever since. Spent a little time away, but Birmingham is home and is where I've lived since 86.
And where'd you go to high school?
Ramsey.
Ramsey High School. Tell us about the football program in the late 60s, early 70s at Ramsey High School.
We were a very small high school in terms of population. But we had a very good coach who, taught us, good basics. And we were one of the only high schools in Birmingham who would venture down to Montgomery to battle Robert E. Lee and Sidney Lanier. It was 3 or 4 times our size. We would not win those games, but we went up against some very significant, strong competition. But Ramsey was where I went to high school, and they were out of football for a number of years, as you know, and just resurfaced as a football team, I guess maybe 7 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood, I think. And the first 2 years, it was pretty brutal in terms of trying to come back and tried to, regain a football team. But since then, they've gotten some really, really good talent, and they are competitors once again on the football scene.
I was going to say their current last few years, they've been very competitive.
No question.
But when you were coming through in your junior high and high school years, the city of Birmingham fielded some outstanding high school programs. Just give us a couple of names, a couple of folks who you competed against back in the day.
Well, the older Rutledge was still around. I didn't play against Johnny Musso, but he was a quarterback for Banks High School, which was another powerhouse in Birmingham, as you recall. David Knapp, who played at Ramsey, was a running back in Alabama, was a highly taught running back. The Odoms brothers, who, they weren't brothers, but they were considered brothers. But one went to Carver and one went to Parker, were both, dual athletic threats, basketball, football, and they were just outstanding athletes. So it's been some pretty good athletes who've come out of Birmingham. Nathan.
Tony Nathan at Woodlawn.
Tony Nathan played against my high school, and at the time, I think he broke the record for number of touchdowns. He scored about 20 touchdowns in a game or something. I mean, it was phenomenal. But Tony Nathan went to Woodlawn High School. So it's been some great athletes who have come out of Birmingham and played football.
And did Ramsey have a home field, or did you play at Legion Field, or where did you play?
Yeah, we played at Legion Field. Then when they built Lawson Field, we played there. But no, Ramsey did not have a home field. That was one of the things, just kind of talking about the present situation, that they don't have really a true practice facility. So they actually travel to Lawson Field, which is in the eastern part of Birmingham, as you know, to practice. And we had a very small field that we practiced on at Ramsey, and that was our extent of our practice facility.
And for folks who don't know, Lawson it's really an older facility. It's kind of run down. I was actually here about a week ago and kind of peered in from afar. And it used to be a pretty great facility, but now I don't think the city or anybody's put money into it. So I can only imagine what kind of circus the current kids are having to practice on.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Well, AJ, as you were coming up, I suspect that football may have been one of your sports, but you had to have, I know other sports may have gotten your attention from time to time, or was football it for you?
Well, I played football, then I played a little baseball, but then I started concentrating more on football toward the end. So it was football and a little baseball for a little while.
Well, how old were you when you decided that maybe football was going to be that you wanted to play after high school? When did the coaches start showing you some interest in that kind of thing?
I'm not sure they ever showed me any interest, but I definitely showed them some interest. When I got there my freshman year, I sort of got a feel for the land a little bit. And it was not until, I guess, my sophomore year that, I joined the B team there. And it was not till my junior year in high school that I started with varsity. And at the time, I was a slot receiver, I should say. And then my last year, we needed another running back, so he put me at running back, and that ended up being the area where I got the most attention.
And obviously, we know after Ramsey, you ended up in Nashville. But tell us that story. How did that come to be?
Well, a coach by the name of Charlie Bradshaw, who was at one point the head coach at Kentucky, was an assistant defensive coordinator at Vanderbilt under Bill Pace, and this was his area, and he was good friends with a high school coach who shared the film with him, and he came to see me, and we had a good conversation, and next thing I know, I was heading to Nashville.
Had you ever seen the campus before you had it in your mind that you were going to school at Vanderbilt?
No, I had never been anywhere close to Nashville. But no, the direct answer to your question is no.
When did you take your first visit? When did you first see the school?
Well, after I was recruited, after I met with Coach Bradshaw, he invited me up for a recruiting trip. I came up with another recruit out of Birmingham, a guy named Cliff Culpepper. I don't know if you know Cliff or not, but Cliff Culpepper was the quarterback at West End, and he and I took our very first airplane flight in life to Nashville, Tennessee, to visit the campus.
And at that point, I mean, I'm sure you were a bundle of nerves and energy and excitement. And what do you recall about that first visit to the campus?
Well, I remember just kind of how friendly everyone seemed to be. I think that was a very important factor. Everyone seemed to have gotten to get along. They were seemed to be very content, very happy about being there. And, they were quite hospitable and kind. And I think that all made a big difference, a big impression on me. I put it like this way, because when I got off that plane, I was scared. I was shaking like a leaf, man. I didn't know what to expect.
What time of the year? What month of the year was it? Was it in January or February?
Now you tested my old memory. Now, no, it was.
How cold was it?
Well, Nashville, it could be cold any day, one day, and hot the next. I don't remember. I think it was cold, but I think it was during the winter months, but I can't remember exactly when it was.
Well, clearly it made an impression on you. Had you during that time period visited other campuses or were other schools recruiting you? Or are you considering other programs at that time?
Well, I was not really heavily recruited. I did get an offer from Tuskegee and an offer from Livingston. So Vanderbilt was sort of out of the blue, to be honest with you, and kind of unexpected. Because I had pretty much made up my mind I was going to Tuskegee, and my mother had gone to Tuskegee, and I had a good visit there. And but Vanderbilt just completely blew me away.
This would have been the spring of your senior year, I assume.
Correct.
You graduated high school in 71?
Correct.
So Taylor Stokes was still on campus.
Yeah, we had some overlap, but yeah, Stokes was there.
Okay.
I tell you what, the other black players at the time was Walter Overton and Doug Nettles. And I came in with a guy by the name of Ken Pittman. At the time, he was a graduate of Pearl High School there in Nashville, and so was Walter. And Doug Nettles ended up playing for the Baltimore Colts for a number of years. And Walter currently is the manager for the Titans Stadium. And I kind of lost track of where Ken Pittman ended up.
Gotcha. Well, AJ, what was your high school? What was the racial makeup of your high school at the time?
At the time, of course, we're talking about starting in '67, so we were in like the second or third phase of integration in Birmingham. So it was, if I had to guess, it was probably less than 5% of black students to the white population of student body.
And Tuskegee obviously is historically considered a black predominant population. I don't know what the racial makeup at Livingston was at that time, which is now West Alabama.
Right.
But when you were being recruited and when you were going up to Nashville and first visiting, was that a concern for you, the racial makeup of the student body or the football program?
Not really. One of the things that Vanderbilt did so well during that recruiting trip was to get me with, obviously with the student athletes who were there, but also with other people on campus. And there was a young man by the name of Walter Murray who worked in the administration, who had gone to Vanderbilt, who also was black. And he was very instrumental in giving me a sense of comfort, a sense of belonging, and this being a real good opportunity. And as I pointed out before, I mean, the players were also genuine and down to earth, and they all made me feel very welcome. So that was not really a concern of mine. I felt very comfortable from day one on campus.
That's refreshing to hear, because I'm sure it's not nearly as, I guess the times at that were still evolving, and you'd like to think that in 2020 they're much, much better, but I'm sure at times.
That's right. That's right. And again, you know, I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture. I mean, but it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't to the extent that I thought it was going to be. Let me put it that way. And the one thing that I thought was very important was the recognition of the players. At the time, the football players were treated as minority students. The attitude of some of the student body at that particular time. And I think as a result of that, we gelled as a team and gelled as teammates, and that made a big difference. I mean, you know, having a community that you to and associate with, I think, is important in terms of being acclimated to that environment.
That's what I was going to ask. I know it's too easy to say during that time period you were a teammate and they saw you as one of theirs, and maybe they did for the most part. And I'm not trying to stir the pot. I'm just saying that the atmosphere on any campus at that time was still, frankly, in the South, getting used to integration of students of minority.
Yeah.
But let me ask you, was Coach Pace, was he your coach who recruited you? Was he the head coach at the time?
He was the head coach at the time, yeah.
And I know you played for Coach Sloan after that.
Correct.
But going into let's fast forward. You graduated high school. Now it's time to go off to Nashville. Do you remember first arriving, any of that fall camp, who your roommate was, what, you know, just anything of that first impressions? And now you're a Vanderbilt University student athlete.
Well, the one thing that I recall and the things I was most excited about was I did not have a roommate. I'd never had a roommate throughout my entire career at Vanderbilt, even as a freshman.
Wow, how did that happen?
See, I had grown up with a sister who I had to share a bedroom with. So for me to have a bedroom by myself was very, very special. But I do recall, I will tell you this. I will tell you this just so I can make sure the picture is complete. The freshman coach at the time, we still had freshmen. That was the last year of freshman football. And I don't even remember the coach's name, but he and I really did not jive very well. And it made it real difficult during that first semester. After I got past that first semester, everything turned completely around, and I've been a Commodore ever since. But that first semester was almost like rushing through a fraternity, which was, you know, pretty egregious at times.
It must have been a real test being I guess you were 18, maybe 19 at the time, away from home, and trying to adjust not only to SEC Division I football, but the rigors of the academics that Vanderbilt also requires.
Right.
What did you ultimately decide from a studies standpoint? What did you major in? What type of classes were you taking your first year?
I took a lot of history class. It took a while for me to really decide what my major was going to be. I sort of taken what I needed to take in order to remain eligible. And at the point in time where they say you're going to have to declare a major, I looked around and noticed I had taken a lot of history classes, a lot of economic classes, so that became my major.
Do you remember Professor Jimmy Franklin in history department? Does that name ring a bell?
No.
I also majored in history, and I don't know if he was there during your years, but he wrote probably the definitive book on Mayor Arrington in Berkeley.
Okay.
So if you ever want to borrow that book, I've got that for you.
I would like to borrow that book, absolutely.
AJ, we've got some folks who signed on who want to say hello. I don't know if you and Kenny Cole were on the team together, but Kenny Cole from North Alabama ended up playing linebacker. He's now a very successful lawyer up in Huntsville, has signed on. So, hey, Kenny, thanks for stopping by for a minute. Y'all may have missed each other by a year or two at Vanderbilt. father, John Crop, was a wide receiver in the early 70s, was a teammate of yours. John Crop says to tell you hello. I don't know if you remember John Crop. And Edie Johnston, Kelsey, thank you, Edie, for stopping by. Guys, we're talking obviously with Anthony, Joseph, AJ, and we're just getting into some of those first years. Now, here's where I'm going to test your memory, AJ, for a minute. When I came through the freshmen in the 80s, we lived our freshman year in Branscombe Quadrangle, right across the street from Memorial Gymnasium.
Right.
Obviously, it's changed over the years. Do you happen to remember where you lived your freshman year?
Cassam Quadrangle.
There you go.
I do remember. I remember the room and everything else. As I say, if nothing else, I remember my room situation clearly. May not remember much else.
After that, did you move over to the towers, or did
I moved to the towers. I was in, I guess, Tower 2. And interesting, I stayed in the same room for the next 3 years.
Wow, I was in my room the last 2 years, Tower 2, 8th floor. I do remember that. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that tower is still standing, or maybe they started with towers 3 and 4, but I think they're all going to be gone before too long.
I think that's right. When I was up there before, they were in the process of bringing down 3 and 4 and building. I think the new dorm is called Zeppos Hall or something like that, but it's on the corner.
Yeah. So, all right, let's stay off the field for a minute. You're getting used to it. Your freshman year, which was a tough year. Did you redshirt or did you not? Didn't redshirt?
No, I didn't redshirt. I got hurt the first game of my freshman year.
And was this on the freshman team, freshman game?
On the freshman team, we were playing the University of Tennessee, and I broke my ankle in several places, and so I was on mission for 8 weeks.
Wow, what happened, if you don't mind telling us?
We were running the wishbone. I took the pitch out around corner, going around, was pulled back from behind and came back down on my ankle and just crushed everything in there. So significant break.
Did you know at that time that was a real injury? You could feel it?
Well, actually, I thought that, but we had a student trainer with us, and he asked me, where did it hurt? I told him where it hurt. He said, oh, well, it's just a hot sprain. When I got to see the doctor finally on Monday morning, he said, we should have operated over the weekend. It was that significant.
Ooh, wow. Yeah. Did they end up doing an operation on you?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did they end up doing an operation?
Yeah, they ended up doing an operation the next day on Tuesday, I think.
Wow. Now, who at that time was the team surgeon, if you recall?
Pinky Lipscomb.
Woo. I think he was the team surgeon. He was still the team surgeon when I was there in the late 80s. They were phasing him out, but I know for the first couple of years he was the team surgeon. Wow. Yeah.
Pinky he did a lot of operations in those days. We had a lot of surgeries.
Wow. So you're getting used to being a freshman in college. You're getting used to SEC football. And those dirty rascals from Knoxville injure you, and that effectively ends your freshman football season. Or did you get to come back at all at the end?
No, I was out of commission for 8 weeks. Couldn't put any weight, any pressure at all on that because they had put a pin in my ankle to keep it stable. So I couldn't do anything for 8 weeks.
Now, at the end of that time, let's go to the end of the semester. You take your final exams. It's time to come home. Did you have any doubts in your mind you were coming back in the spring and then you were going out for spring training and those kind of things?
Well, I did have doubts. That was the only time I had doubts at Vanderbilt because at the time I had almost made up my mind I was going to leave. I mean, I was that sort of depressed about the ankle and how things were sort of gelling at the time. Excuse me. My mother convinced me to go back, get your grades, and then you can transfer wherever you want to go. I came back and things just sort of completely turned around, and I never looked back after that.
Wow. Were you healthy enough to go out for spring ball?
Yes,
I bet that made a big, big difference in your mindset as
it
well.
did. It did. It did. It opened my eyes. It gave me it kind of rejuvenated me, and as a result of that, I just sort of got my attitude just completely changed.
Now that spring, had Coach Sloan come on, or was it still Coach Pace?
It was still Coach Pace. Yeah, it was still Coach Pace at the time.
And were you in the mix fighting for a spot to play one of the running back positions?
Yeah, I started my sophomore year,
Mhm.
and then I got hurt again my junior year, and that year I was redshirted, and I came back and played my senior year.
Well,
But
tell us about, if you can remember this, and most people either remember it very vividly or they have something that kind of sparks in them. And here's my question. When you're playing at Ramsey, you might have played in front of a few thousand people on a big night in high school.
mhm.
You play freshman football, and I suspect there may be a little bit bigger crowd, but it's nothing like a Saturday SEC competition.
Right.
You run into that huddle that first game. Do you remember who it was against in 72? Do you remember where you were or how you felt? Any of those things?
Well, I do remember it being sort of out of body experience, and I think it was Kentucky. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Kentucky. And I just recall as all of us remember, you have those nerves just sort of building up before the game, and you get on the field, you're still a little nervous, and sort of your legs are shaking, you shaking a little bit until you get that first lick. And I can still remember that first lick like it was yesterday, and that brought me back to reality.
All right, I'm going to pull it up real quick. We're going to test your memory, okay?
Okay.
In 72, the team went 3-8 on the season. You won that very first game. It was Chattanooga at home, 24-7. Then you lost a close game to Mississippi State. Bama, blowout by Bama in Tuscaloosa, but then 2 wins against Virginia and William and Mary. I don't know if any of these games ring a bell, but and then the rest of the season were losses to play out. But I'm looking to see, do you remember who your quarterback was or any of the notable players at the time?
Fred Fisher was the quarterback. Lonnie Sadler was one of the backs, and Walter Overton was the slot receiver. Jesse Mathis was the wide receiver at one point.
72, you still had Watson Brown on the roster.
Yeah, he was still around.
Yeah.
He was a redshirted senior at the time. It was pretty cool to have him on the team. It really was.
Well, of course, he's forever known for beating Alabama.
That's right.
Now, you also had David Lee.
David Lee.
One of the quarterbacks. Let's see your stats. You had 55 attempts rushing, 232 yards for a 4.2 average. That's not too shabby. That's not too shabby at all. Well, what stuck out? We can kind of take your seasons as a whole. We don't have to run through all the seasons, but I know you had some of those highlight clips. You're breaking off 15 and 20 yards, and it's not you just sprinting away. This is you putting your head down and lowering some licks. But AJ, you were not necessarily, and I don't mean offense by this, you weren't a gazelle. You were more of a power runner. And I don't know if that was your intended style, but that's the way it certainly looked, because there was some power in there.
Well, you're a very kind man. I'm going to owe you after this session, clearly. We had, that was sort of the way I pretty much ran, I think. I was quicker than I was faster on many instances. And I think I kind of had that talent from high school. So, it was some good moments there. Not a lot, but a few. So, but I'm thankful for the opportunity, just having the opportunity to do it was and I'm very thankful for that.
Well, I know by 74, was that your final season of playing, or did you play into 75?
74 was the final season, and I graduated in 75. I mean, I graduated in 75.
I know that Jamie O'Rourke was he carried most of the load. He had some outstanding games.
Yeah.
During that time period. He almost had 1,000 yards that year, 927. And it looks like David Lee was the main quarterback.
Yeah, David was the quarterback at that time. David had taken over. David was a quarterback. Jamie was fullback, and I think Lonnie Sadler was the tailback as starters.
And that season, that was the bowl season for the Peach Bowl.
Right.
You remember going to Atlanta? Do you remember the Texas Tech game?
I do remember going to Atlanta. I remember the Texas Tech game. I remember the 6-6 tie. I remember that they stole our coach.
I was just getting ready to say, leading up to that game, Vanderbilt hadn't been in a bowl game in a couple of decades.
No, that's exactly right. It was quite an experience.
How exciting was that at the time?
It was a big deal. I mean, it was a big deal getting into the bowl game. Very exciting for everybody on the team, obviously. It was a new experience for all of us to have that kind of attention, that opportunity, and just to be there under the lights, under the cameras, like that was a big deal. So the team was very excited and really interesting. We all received Peach Bowl watches as a result of the game, and within a year, all the watches had broken. And so I only say that to say that we ended up having a reunion probably about 10 years ago. Coach Sloan came back, several coaches came back, and we made a significant donation to Vanderbilt, that team, and the school gave us all new Peach Bowl watches as a result of that. So that was pretty cool too.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you still have your watch?
I still have my watch.
All right, I'm going to hold you to this. I want you to send me a picture of it because I want to post it so everybody can see it.
Okay.
After we finish. But Anthony, you had a roller coaster of a football career, if you will. You go from the injury freshman year, success sophomore year, you play, but then you get redshirted, and then you come back, and it just that perseverance. I know that the education aspect of Vanderbilt is almost always much more important than the sports experience, but you can't separate them, especially if you're playing a D1 sport.
Right.
So I want to ask you, and I'm sure these are some lessons you've shared with your sons over the years, probably to the point where they now roll their eyes or they can recite it back to you. Yes, Dad, we know. But that's what I want to ask about, because if we've got future Commodores watching this, or some of the younger guys who are still on the team or just graduated maybe watching this, what was it about playing D1 football at Vanderbilt, going away for the first time, being in a different environment that lets you to grow up and to experience these life lessons that have stayed with you all these years?
Well, I think I learned, and I think this is probably the most important lesson I learned, is that the importance of being a part of a team. It took me a while to kind of understand that. Everyone has a role, everyone has a responsibility, and no matter what it is, maybe a big role, maybe a small role, I can play a role in the development of that team. And you don't look in terms of you trying to shine, whether or not you can help the team in some way, whether or not it's big or whether it's small. And I think that's helped me, along the way as well. I've thought about that because, everyone doesn't get the limelight. Everybody doesn't get the accolades and the pats on the back. But like I say, everybody can play a significant role in that project or a particular role in that organization.
That's so interesting and so important, because most of us, when we leave our respective high schools, if you're going to be playing Division I, particularly SEC, you had to have been accomplished in some way in your high school level. So right. You really are a big fish in a little pond, so to speak. But then when you get to Vanderbilt, everybody is that for the most part.
Mhm.
You're not the only running back who's coming in with your class, or you're not the only kicker. So you're now having to find your role. You're so right. I think that the most successful players and the most successful people are not the ones with the biggest stats. It's the ones who fit into that teamwork, who bring everybody together, whether you help rally the team, if you're one of the rah-rah guys on the sidelines, or maybe you lead by example. And Frank,
Right.
watching what you did on the field, obviously I never saw you off the field, but just seeing how hard you ran set such a tone for some of the teammates, I'm sure. So I hope that it either was brought to your attention or resonated either then or later on, just that very thing, being a teammate.
Right. I think that's very important. I really do. I agree with you.
Imagine in your casework, you don't work alone. I know you have a team that helps you with your legal career and your cases. And I mean, even for me, if I'm going to try a case in court, it's not just me.
Right.
It's maybe other lawyers in my firm, or maybe paralegals. It's a team.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a very good point.
Well, it just, I know that there's always life lessons to learn. Now, whether a person learns them and then utilizes them, that's a whole different story.
No, I agree with you. But it's there for you if you want it.
Well, by the time you were a senior and you could see that you were on track to graduate and that there was going to be life after Vanderbilt, had you set on your career goals by that point? Did you know what was next for you?
Well, I wanted to go to law school toward the end of my senior year at Vanderbilt. I decided I wanted to go to law school, but I sort of wanted to have a year where I was just focusing on studies. So I decided to go to graduate school at Howard for a couple of years. So I did that, and I ended up coming back to Birmingham to go to Cumberland for law school. So it was right about that period of time when things have started to crystallize a little bit in terms of where I wanted to go.
So you didn't do like I did. The morning of one of your home football games, my senior year, I decided to take the LSAT that morning. I didn't tell Coach Brown. I had a friend pick me up at the hotel. We were staying in Brentwood, and we went to the center, to take the test. Of course, I missed all the morning meetings. I wasn't starting. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but boy, was it, because we blew out Miami, Ohio that night, and I didn't get to play where I think I would have played had I not taken the LSAT. But that's neither here nor there.
But look where you ended up, though.
That's right. Things turned out okay, and the statute of limitations is passed. So hopefully, Coach Brown isn't still mad at me for that.
There you go. There you go.
AJ, we're getting close toward the end of our conversation, and I sure appreciate you sharing your story with us. When you weren't studying, when you weren't sleeping and recuperating and lifting weights and practicing football, where were some fun places on or off campus for you and your buddies?
Rotiers. I still to this day can taste those burgers.
When I was up there last year for the Alabama game, we went in and had burgers there.
Oh yeah, I have fond memories of that place. And there was a few choice places downtown that we went to every blue moon, but Rotiers was the best because you could walk there and get a burger, get a beer, and you were in good shape right there. Yeah, so I remember that very fondly.
Because it was walking literally across the street from the.
That's right. That's right.
And back in the day, the downtown of today it's Disney World compared to what it was back when I was in school. You didn't go downtown very often or for very much. It just was a bad element.
Yeah.
At least in the 80s. I don't know how it was when you were in school, but we just didn't go down there.
It wasn't a favorite spot, but every now and then it was we would sneak down there a little bit. But
okay. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for spending some time with me tonight and and running through some memories oh, I meant to ask this earlier. Who were some of your running around buddies? Who were some of your teammates you were closest with back in the day?
I don't know if you recall the name Bill Ligon. He was a basketball player.
Now, where was Bill?
He was from Gallatin, Tennessee, I think.
Okay.
And Walter Overton and Doug Nettles, for the most part, and a few other folks I can't really recall at this point, but those are the guys I hung out with a lot. Yeah.
It's lifelong memories.
No question about it.
They're probably the kind of guys that you pick up the phone and you pick right back up where you were, and the stories. There's some truth in there somewhere, but over a little bit stretched.
That's it. There you go. Big fish tails.
That's right. That's right. Well, AJ, thank you, my friend, for spending some time with us and sharing your memories and your experience about being a Commodore.
My pleasure. Good seeing you, man. I hope to see you soon. Everybody stay safe and stay well.
No, that's exactly right. We're going to get through this pandemic. You're going to be able to head back to Dudley Field or catch the Commodores in person somewhere in the South. But even if you don't like to wear a mask, I say it every week, please wear it for your fellow mankind. We're going to get through this. Just got to use some common sense and some patience. Guys, I've got a treat for you next week. I got two of the guys from my recruiting class, Thor Erickson and Jim Arnott, and I promise you're going to want to tune in live for this one. It's going to be fun. Y'all have a good week. Anchor down.
Anchor down. Good night, everybody.